Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in our series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, we're turning to Great Expectations. Master, she again murmured. Please, Molly, said Mr. Jaggers, not looking at her, but obstinately looking at the opposite side of the room. Let them see both your wrists. Show them, come. He took his hand from hers and turned that wrist up on the table. She brought her other hand from behind her and held the two out side by side. The last wrist was much disfigured, deeply scarred, across and across. When she held her hands out, she took her eyes from Mr. Jaggers and turned them watchfully on every one of the rest of us in succession. There's power here, said Mr. Jaggers, coolly tracing out the sinews with his forefinger. Very few men have the power of wrist that this woman has. It's remarkable that what mere force of grip there is in these hands. I have had occasion to notice many hands, but I never saw stronger in that respect, man or woman's, than these. While he said these words in a leisurely critical style, she continued to look at every one of us in regular succession as we sat. The moment he ceased, she looked at him again. That'll do, Molly, said Mr. Jaggers, giving her a slight nod. You have been admired and can go. She withdrew her hands and went out of the room. And Mr. Jaggers, putting the decanters on from his dumbwaiter, filled his glass and passed round the wine. At 9:30, gentlemen, said he, we must break up. Pray, make the best use of your time. I am glad to see you all, Mr. Drummle. I drink to you. If his object is singling out Drummle were to bring him out still more, it perfectly succeeded. In a sulky triumph, Drummle showed his morose depreciation of the rest of us in a more and more offensive degree until he became downright intolerable. Through all his stages, Mr. Jaggers followed him with the same strange interest. He actually seemed to serve as a zest to Mr. Jaggers' wine. In our boyish want of discretion, I dare say we took too much to drink, and I know we talked too much. We became particularly hot upon some boorish sneer of Drummle's, to the effect that we were too free with our money. It led to my remarking, with more zeal than discretion, that it came with a bad grace from him, to whom Startop had lent money in my presence but a week or so before. Well, retorted Drummle, he'll be paid. I don't mean to imply that he won't, said I, but it might make you hold your tongue about us and our money, I should think. You should think, retorted Drummle. Oh, Lord. I dare say, I went on, meaning to be very severe, that you wouldn't lend money to any of us if we wanted it. You are right, said Drummle. I wouldn't lend one of you a sixpence. I wouldn't lend anybody a sixpence. Rather, mean to borrow under those circumstances, I should say. You should say, repeated Drummle. Oh, Lord. This was so aggravating, the more especially as I found myself making no way against his surly obtuseness, that I said, disregarding Herbert's efforts to check me, Come, Mr. Drummle, since we are the subject, I'll tell you what passed between Herbert and me when you borrowed that money. I don't want to know what happened between Herbert and you, growled Drummle, and I think he added in a lower growl that we might both go to the devil and shake ourselves. I'll tell you, however, said I, whether you want to know or not. We said that as you put it in your pocket, very glad to get it, you seemed to be immensely amused at his being so weak as to lend it. Drummle laughed outright, and sat laughing in our faces with his hands in his pockets, and his round shoulders raised, plainly signifying that it was quite true, and that he despised us as asses all. Hereupon Startop took him in hand, though with a much better grace than I had shown, and exhorted him to be a little more agreeable. Startop being a lively, bright young fellow, and Drummle being the exact opposite. The latter was always disposed to resent him as a direct personal affront, He now retorted in a coarse, lumpish way, and Startop tried to turn the discussion aside with some small pleasantry that made us all laugh. Resenting this little success more than anything, Drummle, without any threat or warning, pulled his hands out of his pockets, dropped his round shoulders, swore, took up a large glass, and would have flung it at his adversary's head, but for our entertainer's dexterously seizing it at that instant when it was raised for that purpose. Gentlemen, said Mr. Jaggers, deliberately putting down the glass and hauling out his gold repeater by its massive chain, I am exceeding sorry to announce that it's 9:30. On this hint, we all rose to depart. Before we got to the street door, Startup was cheerily calling Drummle, "Old boy," as if nothing had happened. But the old boy was so far from responding that he would not even walk to Hammersmith on the same side of the way. So, Herbert and I, who remained in town, saw them going down the street on opposite sides, Startup leading and Drummle lagging behind in the shadow of the houses, much as he wont to follow in his boat. As the door was not yet shut, I thought I would leave Herbert there for a moment, and run upstairs again to say a word to my guardian. I found him in his dressing room, surrounded by his stock of boots already hard at it, washing his hands of us. I told him I had come up again to say how sorry I was that anything disagreeable should have occurred, and that I hoped he would not blame me much. "Pooh," said he, sluicing his face and speaking through the water drops. "It's nothing. Pip, I like that spider, though." He had turned towards me now, and was shaking his head and blowing and toweling himself. "I'm glad you like him, sir," said I, "but I don't." "No, no," my guardian assented. "Don't have too much to do with him. Keep as clear of him as you can. But I like the fellow, Pip. He is one of the true sort. Why, if I was a fortune-teller—" Looking out of the towel, he caught my eye. "But I am not a fortune-teller," he said, letting his head drop into a festoon of towel, and toweling away at his 2 ears. "You know what I am, don't you? Good night, Pip." "Good night, sir." In about a month after that, the spider's time with Mr. Pocket was up for good, and to the great relief of all the house but Mrs. Pocket, he went home to the family hole. Chapter 27. My dear Mr. Pip, I write this by request of Mr. Gardry, for to let you know that he is going to London in company with Mr. Wopsle, and would be glad, if agreeable, to be allowed to see you. He would call at Barnard's Hotel Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock, when, if not agreeable, please leave word. Your poor sister is much the same as when you left. We talk of you in the kitchen every night, and wonder what you are saying and doing. If now considered in the light of a liberty, excuse it for the love of poor old days. No more, dear Mr. Pip. From your ever obliged and affectionate servant, Biddy. P.S. He wishes me most particular to write what larks he says you will understand. I hope and do not doubt it would be agreeable to see him, even though a gentleman, for you have had ever a good heart, and he is a worthy, worthy man. I have read him all excepting only the last little sentence, and he wishes me most particular to write what larks. Write again what larks. I received this letter by the post on Monday morning, and therefore its appointment was for the next day. Let me confess exactly with what feelings I look forward to Joe's coming. Not with pleasure, though I was bound to him by so many ties. No, with considerable disturbance, some mortification, and a keen sense of incongruity. If I could have kept him away by paying money, I certainly would have paid money. My greatest reassurance was that he was coming to Barnard's Inn, not to Hammersmith, and consequently would not fall in Drummle's way. I had a little objection to his being seen by Herbert or his father, for both of whom I had respect, but I had the sharpest sensitiveness as to his being seen by Drummle, whom I held in contempt. So, throughout life, our worst weaknesses and meannesses are usually committed for the sake of the people whom we most despise. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.